Jean-Paul Sartre's Nausea does not argue, it exposes, it does not present a thesis and defend it. It places the reader inside an experience that resists explanation. Sartre is not trying to convince us of an idea. He is trying to make something happen to us. That something is nausea. Nausea, in Sartre's sense, is not physical sickness and not emotional disgust. It is not a reaction to something unpleasant. It is the moment when the world loses its familiar justification and reveals itself as unnecessary. Things appear without reason, without foundation, and without excuse. This is why Nausea is written as a diary. Sartre wants the experience to unfold gradually, unevenly, without philosophical framing. The protagonist, Antoine Roquentin, does not begin with insight. He begins with disturbance. Something feels wrong, but nothing obvious is wrong. The world has not changed. His perception of it has. Sartre insists that most of the time we live protected from existence. Objects are tools, people are roles. The world is organized by usefulness, habit, and expectation. We do not encounter things as they are. We encounter them as meaningful, familiar, and manageable. Nausea begins when this protective layer breaks down. Roquentin looks at objects, a stone, a chair, a tree root, and finds that they no longer fit into their usual categories. They are no longer simply for something. They appear excessive, heavy, almost obscene in their presence. They exist too much. This excess is the source of nausea. Sartre's central insight is that existence is not necessary. There is no reason why anything should be rather than not be. The world does not rest on logic, purpose, or design. It simply happens. When this fact becomes visible, meaning collapses. This collapse is not intellectual, it is visceral. Nausea is the bodily registration of contingency. It is what happens when consciousness encounters being without mediation. The mind recoils not because something is horrible, but because something is too real. This is why Sartre insists that nausea is not despair. Despair still assumes meaning has failed. Nausea occurs before meaning. It occurs when meaning reveals itself as an overlay rather than a foundation. The world, Sartre suggests, is not meaningful and then stripped of meaning. It is meaningless first and meaning is added later. Nausea is the moment this addition becomes visible as artificial. Roquentin experiences this not as revelation, but as intrusion. He does not seek nausea, it happens to him. This is crucial. Sartre wants to show that confrontation with existence is not chosen, it interrupts. This interruption destabilizes identity as well. Roquentin begins to feel estranged not only from objects, but from himself. His past no longer anchors him. His memories feel arbitrary. His sense of being a coherent self weakens. Sartre is showing that identity, like meaning, depends on continuity that can break. When continuity breaks, the self appears as contingent as everything else. This is why Sartre describes existence as sticky, viscous, and overflowing. These metaphors are not decorative. They convey resistance. Existence does not submit to categorization. It resists explanation. It presses in on consciousness. Nausea is the feeling of this pressure. Sartre contrasts this experience with the comfort of rational systems. History, morality, science, and culture all attempt to tame existence by explaining it. Sartre does not deny their usefulness. He denies their foundation. They work because we believe in them. They do not work because they are necessary. Nausea exposes this belief. This exposure produces anxiety, but also lucidity. Roquentin begins to see that values are not discovered but created, that narratives do not describe reality but organize it, that necessity is imposed, not found. This insight is unbearable to live in permanently. Sartre knows this. Nausea cannot be sustained indefinitely. Consciousness recoils and reconstructs meaning. Life resumes, but the memory remains. Once one has seen existence as contingent, one cannot entirely unsee it. Meaning returns, but it is fragile. Roles resume, but they feel provisional. Sartre is not offering liberation here, he is offering destabilization. This is why Nausea is not a manifesto. It does not tell us how to live. It shows us what existence looks like before we decide how to live. Sartre wants the reader to feel the same unease Roquentin feels. He wants us to recognize that what we take for granted rests on nothing solid. This recognition does not tell us what to do. It removes excuses. If nothing is necessary, then nothing justifies us automatically. This is the ethical background of Nausea, though ethics has not yet appeared explicitly. Sartre is preparing the ground. Before freedom can be understood, necessity must be dismantled. Before responsibility can be claimed, meaning must lose its innocence. Nausea is therefore not a psychological novel. It is an ontological one. It describes what it is like to encounter being itself, not through abstraction, but through sensation. Existence, Sartre insists, is not neutral. It overwhelms, it intrudes, it disgusts not because it is bad, but because it is unjustified. This unjustified presence is what Nausea names. At this stage, Sartre has not yet shown us what can be done with this experience. He has only shown that the world does not come with meaning built in, and that encountering this fact is profoundly unsettling. The question remains open. If existence is contingent, excessive, and without reason, then how does one live at all? How does meaning reappear without becoming illusion again? And what does this experience imply for freedom, choice, and responsibility? If Nausea reveals the contingency of existence, then Sartre must confront a question that cannot be postponed. What becomes of life once this revelation occurs? If the world has no inherent meaning, if things simply are without reason, then how does one continue living without retreating into illusion or collapsing into despair? Sartre's answer is subtle, and it is often misunderstood. Nausea does not end in nihilism, it ends in exposure. The experience of nausea strips the world of false necessity, but it does not forbid meaning, it changes the status of meaning. Meaning no longer appears as something discovered, it appears as something made. This distinction is crucial. Before nausea, meaning feels natural. Objects seem to have purposes, roles seem justified, histories seem necessary. After nausea, meaning reappears as human work. It is constructed, fragile, and revisable. Sartre does not see this as a loss. He sees it as the condition of freedom. Freedom becomes visible only once necessity collapses. This is why Sartre insists that nausea is not a permanent state. Consciousness cannot live indefinitely in direct confrontation with contingency. The experience is too intense, too destabilizing. Life requires structure, meaning returns, but now it returns without innocence. Roquentin does not remain paralyzed. He continues to live. He eats, walks, listens to music, and reflects. But something has changed. The world no longer presents itself as justified. It presents itself as open. This openness is unsettling, but it is also liberating. Sartre introduces this transition through Roquentin's experience of art, particularly music. A song briefly imposes form on chaos. Notes follow one another with necessity, not because the world demands it, but because a human structure has been created. Meaning appears, not as truth, but as invention. This moment matters enormously. Art does not erase contingency, it responds to it. It does not claim that existence makes sense. It creates sense temporarily, locally, and without claiming universality. Sartre sees this as a model for how life itself must be lived after nausea. Meaning must be created without pretending it is necessary. This is the ethical pivot of nausea. Sartre does not offer a moral system. He offers a condition. Once contingency is seen, one can no longer appeal to fate, essence, or destiny. Choices are exposed as choices. This exposure produces anxiety, but it also produces responsibility. Before nausea, actions feel guided by roles and expectations. After nausea, those roles appear arbitrary. One realizes that one continues them by choice, not by nature. Even conformity becomes an act. Sartre insists that this realization does not make life easier. It makes it heavier. Without necessity, nothing excuses us. Without essence, nothing guarantees us. Without meaning given in advance, everything we do participates in meaning's creation. This is why nausea is often misread as pessimistic. Sartre is not saying that life is pointless. He is saying that life has no point until one makes one, and that making a point does not transform it into necessity. The point remains provisional. This provisionality is what distinguishes Sartre from romantic existentialism. Sartre does not celebrate authenticity as self-expression or emotional truth. He insists that meaning must be maintained in the face of its own contingency. Creation is ongoing, it does not settle. This is why Roquentin does not arrive at peace. He arrives at clarity. Clarity here does not mean understanding everything. It means understanding that nothing is guaranteed. That clarity does not tell one what to do. It tells one that whatever one does will not be justified in advance. Sartre believes most people flee this clarity. They retreat into habits, routines, and identities. This retreat is not always dishonest. Sartre does not condemn ordinary life. He insists only that ordinary life is built on structures that can crack. Nausea cracks them deliberately. Once cracked, one cannot pretend they were never fragile. One can live within them, but no longer behind them. This is where freedom re-enters decisively. Freedom for Sartre is not the feeling of possibility. It is the condition of acting without foundation. After nausea, freedom becomes unavoidable. One cannot say, "This is how things are," without recognizing that one participates in how things are. This participation is what produces responsibility. Sartre does not demand that one constantly feel nausea. He does not demand that one live in perpetual existential crisis. He demands only honesty about the contingency that underlies one's life. Honesty does not mean despair. It means refusing to lie to oneself about necessity. This refusal has consequences. One can no longer blame the world for what one becomes. One can no longer treat meaning as something one merely inherits. One becomes implicated. This implication is the bridge from nausea to Sartre's later philosophy. Freedom, bad faith, responsibility, conflict, all are grounded in this original exposure to contingency. Before one can lie to oneself, one must first encounter the truth one wishes to escape. Nausea is that encounter. Sartre's achievement is to show that philosophy is not only thought, but experience. Ontology is not confined to abstraction. It appears in how the world feels when its justifications dissolve. The nausea does not disappear because the truth disappears. It disappears because consciousness rebuilds meaning. But now that rebuilding is visible, this visibility is irreversible. One may forget it for long periods. One may live comfortably, productively, and even happily. But the knowledge remains. Meaning is made, not found. This knowledge does not tell us what to create. It tells us that creation is unavoidable. By the end of nausea, Sartre has not given us a way of life. He has taken away an excuse. He has shown that existence does not demand anything from us, and that this absence of demand places the demand entirely on us. Existence does not justify itself. Meaning does not come pre-installed. Freedom does not wait to be discovered. It is already there, heavy, exposed, and without shelter. Nausea does not answer the question of how to live. It makes clear why the question can no longer be avoided.